All right, so today we're diving into conversational hypnosis, but with a bit of a twist.
Okay.
We're going to be looking at the work of Virginie.
Oh, cool.
She's a trainer, and she's kind of shaking things up a little bit.
Mm.
Her big idea is testing a client's results during the actual hypnosis session.
Okay.
It's like the secret weapon for long-lasting change, or so she says.
Interesting. So instead of waiting till the end of a session to see if anything shifted, she's saying, let's test it out right then and there.
Yeah, basically.
That's pretty cool.
So how does she actually go about testing these changes, like in the middle of a session?
Well, she has a system.
Okay.
She outlines 3 main types of tests.
Right.
Situational,
Oh.
emotional, and get this ridiculous test.
Ridiculous tests.
Oh, yeah.
I'm all ears.
All right, so let's start with the situational ones.
Okay.
Imagine you're working with someone who wants to quit smoking.
Okay.
A situational test might involve, like, recreating a typical trigger, like having them imagine finishing a stressful workday. The idea is to see if their new mindset can, like, hold up under pressure.
So it's like a dress rehearsal for real life, kind of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, make sure those changes are, like, rock solid.
Okay, cool. So then you've got emotional tests. What are those?
All right, so emotional tests get a bit more complex.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine someone is struggling with anxiety in their family life, right?
Okay.
An emotional test might involve having them visualize a challenging scenario with their partner or kids, especially after a tough day. It's about seeing how they navigate those, like, intense emotions with their newfound tools.
Yeah, I can see how that would be a real test.
Right.
Okay, but what about these ridiculous tests?
Yeah.
What are those all about?
Yes, the ridiculous tests. These are all about pushing things to the extreme.
Okay.
Think of it as a stress test for the subconscious. If the change can survive, that it can survive anything.
I like it.
Imir gives this example of a client who's struggling to work from home because of clutter, right?
Oh, yeah. Right there.
They tested her ability to focus in that environment, even amping up the disorganization, to see if she could truly handle it.
So they didn't just ask her if she thought she could focus. They actually had her try it out.
Exactly.
Oh,
Yeah.
Wow.
But here's where it gets even more interesting.
Okay.
Sometimes Imir finds that addressing the root cause can actually make the initial symptom irrelevant.
Oh, interesting.
She had a client who, after dealing with a deeper issue, realized they no longer minded procrastinating. It just didn't bother them anymore.
Wow. So it's not just about treating the symptom. It's about uncovering what's really driving it.
Yeah, exactly. You got it.
That's fascinating.
And this actually leads us to another key element of Imir's approach.
Okay.
The client convincing the therapist.
Wait, what? The client convincing the therapist?
Yes.
I don't get it. How does that work?
So think of it as a kind of playful challenge, right? Imir talks about questioning a client who claimed to have changed, even expressing doubt, about their commitment to finally tackling those, like, 10-year-old boxes in the basement. It forces the client to really own their transformation.
So it's not just about passively receiving suggestions. The client actively proves to both themselves and the therapist that the change is real.
Exactly. Yeah, it's about embodying the change, not just intellectually understanding it.
Yeah.
And this is how Imir ensures that the transformation is deeply ingrained.
Okay, so we've got these intense tests happening during the session, and then we have this dynamic where the client has to convince the therapist they've actually changed.
Right.
This is pretty far from the typical image of someone lying on a couch being hypnotized, isn't it?
Absolutely. Imir's approach is all about active participation and real-world results.
Okay.
It's about making sure those changes aren't just temporary, but are, like, integrated into the fabric of your being.
This is already blowing my mind. But I have to ask, how does this whole client convincing the therapist thing actually play out in a session? What does that look like?
That's a great question, and one we'll explore further as we continue this deep dive.
Okay, now I'm really hooked. Tell me more.
So Imir describes it as this kind of dance between skepticism and encouragement.
Okay.
She doesn't just take the client's word for it,
Right.
She probes, she challenges, and sometimes even playfully pushes back.
So it's almost like she's playing devil's advocate,
Yeah.
forcing the client to defend their own transformation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She wants the client to demonstrate, not just declare their newfound capabilities.
Oh, see.
Imir gives this example. Imagine a client who says they've overcome their fear of public speaking.
Okay.
Instead of simply accepting that statement, right? Imir might say something like, "Oh, really? So you're telling me you'd be completely comfortable giving a presentation to a room full of strangers tomorrow?"
Whoa. That's putting them on the spot.
Right.
But I can see how it would force them to confront any, like, lingering doubts or insecurities.
Yeah. Exactly. And if the client hesitates or backpedals, iMirror will dig deeper, asking questions like, what's holding you back? What are you still afraid of?
It's like she's helping them uncover those hidden roadblocks that could sabotage their progress in the real world.
Precisely. And here's the fascinating part.
Okay.
Imir says that this process often leads to a genuine aha moment for the client. As they grapple with her questions, they start to see their own transformation in a new light.
Yeah.
It's like they're convincing themselves as much as they're convincing her.
So it's not just about proving something to the therapist, it's about solidifying that change within themselves.
You got it. That's the beauty of Imer's approach. It's not just about intellectual understanding, it's about experiential knowing.
Right.
The client doesn't just think they've changed, they feel it in every fiber of their being.
Okay, this is all starting to click for me. But let's bring this back to everyday life.
Okay.
How can someone apply this kind of self-testing outside of a therapy setting?
That's a great question, and one Imir addresses directly. Okay.
She believes that anyone can incorporate elements of this testing process into their own personal growth journey.
So let's say I'm trying to overcome procrastination. How could I apply this to my situation?
Well, instead of just telling yourself, I'm not going to procrastinate anymore,
Right.
you can set up little tests to challenge that new belief.
Okay.
For example, you could create a task that you typically avoid and give yourself a very short deadline to complete it.
So it's about creating those real-life situations that force me to put my willpower to the test.
Exactly. And if you find yourself struggling, don't just give in. Ask yourself those tough questions. What's really stopping you? Are you truly committed to overcoming this habit? Are you willing to prove it to yourself?
It's like I'm taking on the role of both the client and the therapist.
Right.
Challenging and encouraging myself at the same time.
You got it. And just like in IMIR sessions, this process of self-questioning can lead to some profound insights.
Yeah.
You might uncover hidden fears or limiting beliefs that you weren't even aware of before. I can see how this approach could be incredibly empowering. It's like taking ownership of my own transformation instead of just hoping for the best.
And that's exactly what Imir advocates for. She believes that lasting change comes from within, from a deep and unwavering belief in our own ability to transform.
This has been such an insightful conversation. I feel like I've gained a whole new toolkit for approaching personal growth.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
And remember, the most important tool is your own willingness to challenge yourself,
Okay.
to experiment, and to embrace the process of transformation.
This whole idea of testing ourselves, really pushing our limits,
Yeah.
it almost sounds like a form of self-hypnosis.
It is in a way. Remember, Imir's approach is all about accessing the power of the subconscious mind.
Right.
And by challenging our beliefs and behaviors, we're essentially forcing that subconscious mind to rewire itself.
So it's not just about thinking differently. It's
Yeah.
about actually behaving differently,
Yeah.
even if it feels uncomfortable at first.
That's the key. Imir believes that true transformation happens when we step outside of our comfort zones and prove to ourselves that we're capable of more than we thought possible.
This has been such an insightful conversation. I feel like I've gained a whole new toolkit for approaching personal growth.
I'm glad. And remember, the most important tool is your own willingness to challenge yourself, to experiment, and to embrace the process of transformation.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Virginie Iyenberg's approach to conversational hypnosis, I'm left with this one question. What if we applied this rigorous self-testing to all areas of our lives? Could it lead to a more empowered and fulfilling existence?
That's a powerful question to ponder. What if we stopped simply hoping for change and started actively proving to ourselves that we're capable of achieving it?
That's a challenge I'm definitely willing to accept. And I hope our listeners will join me on this journey of self-discovery and transformation.
It's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you. Until next time, keep those minds curious and those goals in sight.
And remember, folks, the power to change is within you. All you have to do is test it.